from everything else Doc explains, I feel, and this is something I share when I'm talking to my young friends like me, we all say, look, 66 years. Everything else I've just heard, Doc, we just can't do it. I mean, we just can't do it. Because from everything I heard Doc just describe, the model, we know the model is a challenge, but we have Ghanaian leaders who are in charge of managing this model and fixing the problem. He just talked about the elite consensus, the political consensus. It's just to benefit a few. So let me throw that to you, the thing that me and my young friends talk about. Now listen, this thing called Ghana, we know the problem, but we just can't do it. Is that a fair point? And I'm saying it because this is not the young people.
That's not my conclusion.
No, I know that's not. I'm just asking a follow. I'm asking a follow-up question based on what I've heard you say. Because when we hear you say young people like me, we meet and you talk and we say, Charlie, I didn't mean yet. Doc, Prof, I'm sure you possibly have children who are possibly my age. We meet and talk and we say that to ourselves.
It's not that old, don't worry.
But Prof, when I said that to you as a young man, what do you say back to me? Having heard everything I've heard you say tonight.
Yes, Evans, before I respond, let me make a point about something you mentioned. The cocoa syndication is something that really has scratched my head and I don't understand. That a country like Ghana, with all the brains that we have created a system where every year we go out to borrow $1.2, $1.5 billion to buy our own cocoa, right? We buy the cocoa, the income from that, I don't know what happens to that. Then the next year we go and borrow again and pay back from what we buy. So is it not possible for us to be making savings all these years for the buying of cocoa, for us to have 1.5 billion a year to buy our own cocoa? And that's why I agree with Yao. There's a syndicate. There's this what we may call alliance of the elites and the external elites who simply are not willing to allow, to open the doors for Ghana to grow. So that's just a point. Because if the cocoa marketing people are listening, my question is, why would they go every year to borrow $1.5 billion to buy cocoa? If the profits that they've been making, they have been saving the profit over 10 years, couldn't we have our own capital to buy our own cocoa? You go and pay interest every year? It doesn't make sense.
Perhaps
anyway,
you just strengthened my question. So on the back of what you just said, I am saying, because it's so obvious what you're saying. It makes common sense to me, but we haven't done it. So for 66 years, should we just give up on this project?
Evans, we can do it.
Convince me.
Because I sincerely believe that there is hope. And I think I like the way you did introductory remarks. That it's not that there's no hope for Ghana. There is. Unfortunately, we find ourselves in a certain situation. Now let me bring into focus what you call the intangibles of development. The intangibles, things that we do not see or we cannot touch, but they are very crucial. And that relates to the human factor of development. The human factor. If you study all the countries you care to study who have developed, you find a certain characteristic about the individuals who led the effort. Even Lee Kuan Yew, Mahathir, and now today, Rwanda, Kagame. You study them and discover why is it possible for them to do what they've done. You see? So when it comes to the human factor, what I call the intangibles of development, it's clear that Ghana will have serious deficit in that. And that comes around the notion of leadership that you mentioned earlier. What kind of leaders do we get? You see, whenever it comes to political campaign for office, it has started already. And I listen to aspiring presidents of this country, and at times I bow down my head. Because they are not telling me anything sensible besides promising the school they will build, besides promising probes that they will conduct into some misconduct. They are not giving us a sense of a vision of where this nation needs to go in the next 10 or 20 years. All because, again, I have to admit, is because of the political system we have imposed on ourselves. Because this system gives you only 4 years, at most 80. And if you look at all the countries that have developed that we kept to cite, it did not take any of them 4 or 8 years to develop. And our system is such that even if a good program is initiated by a sitting government, the next government from a different party comes and they jettison that. So we do not move forward. I recognize and I agree with Yao, we've made some significant progress, no doubt. When we were growing up, these roads we see in Accra, they were not there. Even when I returned to Ghana in 94, Accra was like a village. Today, Accra is comparable to any, but these are things we see, you see. So I think we need to be looking at the human factor very, very carefully. We need to select people who demonstrate competence, experience, and exposure. Because you see, Lee Kuan Yew said something that I would like to cite. He said that his contemporaries and all these African leaders in the 50s and 60s were Lee Kuan Yew's contemporaries. Kwame Nkrumah, Nyerere, all of them were his contemporaries. He said that his contemporaries wanted a shortcut to development. That is why they used the state as the instrument of development. But he used private capital. I'm not making judgments here, but I'm just telling you how he did it. Private capital, that was long-term planning, strategic planning and all. And in 28 to 30 years, the country changed. In the same way, if you look at Mahathir in Malaysia, he was there for 24 years and things changed. South Korea, the same. This military general, through coup, but he served his country. After that, he went to the convent, monastery, after committing all the crimes. But then, in his time, in 24, 23 years, South Korea changed. So longevity has something to do with development. I don't rule that.